Breath Eyes Memory by Edwidge, Danticat. Chapter 1. A flattened and drying daffodil was hanging off the little card that I had made my Aunt Artie for Mother's Day. I pressed my palm over the flower and squashed it against the plain beige cardboard. When I turned the corner near the house, I saw her sitting in an old rocker in the yard, staring at a group of children crushing dried yellow leaves into the ground. The leaves had been left in the sun to dry. They would be burned that night at the convict potluck dinner. I put the card back in my pocket before I got to the yard. When Aunt Artie saw me, she raised the piece of white cloth she was embroidering and waved it at me. When I stood in front of her, she opened her arms just wide enough for my body to fit into them. "How was school?" she said with a big smile. She bent down and kissed my forehead, then pulled me onto her lap. "School was all right," I said. "I like everything but those reading classes they let parents come to in the afternoon. Everybody's parent come, except you. I never have anyone to read with. So, Monsieur Augustin always pairs me off with an old lady who wants to learn her letters, but doesn't have children at the school. I do not want a pack of children teaching me how to read," she said. "The young should learn from the old, not the other way. Besides, I have to rest my back when you have your class. I have work." A blush of embarrassment rose to her brown cheeks. At one time, I would have given anything to be in school, but at my age, my time is gone. Cooking and cleaning, looking after others, that's my school now. That schoolhouse is your school. Cutting cane was the only thing for a young one to do when I was your age. That is why I never want to hear you complain about your school." She adjusted a pink head rag, wrapped tightly around her head, and dashed off a quick smile, revealing 2 missing teeth. "As long as you do not have to work in the fields, it does not matter that I will never learn to read that old ragged Bible under my pillow." Whenever she was sad, Tante Artie would talk about the sugarcane fields, where she and my mother practically lived when they were children. They saw people die there from sunstroke every day. Tante Artie said that one day, while they were all working together, her father, my grandfather, stopped to wipe his forehead, leaned forward, and died. My grandmother took the body in her arms and tried to scream the life back into it. They all kept screaming and hollering as my grandmother's tears bathed the corpse's face. Nothing would bring my grandfather back. The ballet man was coming up the road. He was tall and yellow, like an amber roach. The children across the road lined up by the fence to watch him, clutching one another as he whistled and strolled past them. This albino, whose name was Javan, was the biggest lottery agent in the village. He was thought to have certain gifts that had nothing to do with the lottery, but which Tante Artie believed put the spirits on his side. For example, if anyone was chasing him, he could turn into a snake with one flip of his tongue. Sometimes he could see the future by looking into your eyes, unless you closed your soul to him, by thinking of a religious song and prayer while in his presence. I could tell that Tante Artie was thinking of one of her favorite verses as he approached. "Death is the shepherd of man, and in the final dawn, good will be the master of evil." "Oh no, ma belles, Artie, Sophie." Chavan winked at us from the front gate. He had no eyelashes, or seemed to have none. His eyebrows were tawny and fine like corn silk, but he had a thick head of dirty red hair. "How are you today?" he asked. "Today we are fine," Tantati said. "Key numero today?" he asked. "What numbers you playing?" "Today we play my sister Martine's age," Tantati said. "Sophie's mother's age, 31. Perhaps it will bring me luck." "31 will cost you 50 cents, he said. Tantati reached into her bra and pulled out one gourd. "We will play the number twice," she said. Even though Tantati played faithfully, she had never won at the ballet. Not even a small amount, not even once. She said the lottery was like love. Providence was not with her, but she was patient. The albino wrote us a receipt with the numbers and the amount Tantati had given him. The children cringed behind the gate as he went on his way. Tantati raised her receipt towards the sun to see it better. "There, he wrote your name," I said, pointing to the letters. "And there, he wrote the number 31. She ran her fingers over the numbers as though they were quilted on the paper. "Would it not be wonderful to read?" I said for what must have been the 100th time. "I tell you, my time is past. School is not for people my age." The children across the street were piling up the leaves in Madame Augustine's yard. The bigger ones waited on the line as the smaller ones dropped into the pile, bouncing to their feet, shrieking and laughing. They called one another's names: foi, hope, faith, espérance, beloved, God-given, my joy, firstborn, lastborn, à ses foi, enough girls, enough boys, deliverance, small misery, big misery, no misery. Names as bright and colorful as the giant poincianas in Madame Augustine's garden. They grabbed one another and fell to the ground, rejoicing as though they had flown past the towering flame trees that shielded the yard from the hot Haitian sun. "You think these children would be kind to their mothers and clean up those leaves," Tantati said. "Instead, they are making a bigger mess." "They should know better," I said, secretly wishing that I too could swim in their sea of dried leaves. Tantati threw her arms around me and squeezed me so hard that the lemon-scented perfume, which she dabbed across her chest each morning, began to tickle my nose. "Sunday is Mother's Day, no?" she said, loudly sucking her teeth. "The young ones, they should show their mothers they want to help them. What you see in children today, it tells you what they will do for you when you are close to the grave." I appreciated Tantati, but maybe I did not show it enough. Maybe she wanted to be a real mother, have a real daughter, to wear matching clothes with, hold hands and learn to read with. "Mother's Day will make you sad, won't it, Tantati?" "Why do you say that?" she asked. "You look like someone who is going to be sad." "You are always wise beyond your years, just like your mother." She gently held my waist as I climbed down from her lap. Then she cupped her face in both palms, her elbows digging into the pleats of her pink skirt. I was going to sneak the card under her pillow Saturday night so that she would find it as she was making the bed on Sunday morning. But the way her face drooped into her palms made me want to give it to her right then. I dug into my pocket and handed it to her. Inside, there was a poem that I had written for her. She took the card from my hand, the flower nearly fell off. She pressed the tape against the short stem, forced the baby daffodil back into its place, and handed the card back to me. She did not even look inside. "Not this year," she said. "Why not this year?" "Sophie, it is not mine." It is your mother's. We must send it to your mother. I only knew my mother from the picture on the night table by Danticat's pillow. She waved from inside the frame with a wide grin on her face and a large flower in her hair. She witnessed everything that went on in the bougainvillea, each step, each stumble, each hug and kiss. She saw us when we got up, when we went to sleep, when we laughed, and when we got upset at each other. Her expression never changed. Her grin never went away. I sometimes saw my mother in my dreams. She would chase me through a field of wild flowers as tall as the sky. When she caught me, she would try to squeeze me into the small frame so I could be in the picture with her. I would scream and scream until my voice gave out. Then Danticat would come and save me from her grasp. I slipped the card back in my pocket and got up to go inside. Danticat lowered her head and covered her face with her hands. Her fingers muffled her voice as she spoke. When I am done feeling bad, I will come in and will find you a very nice envelope for your card. Maybe it will get to your mother after the fact, but she will welcome it because it will come directly from you. It is your card, I insisted. It is for a mother, your mother. She motioned me away with a wave of her hand. When it is Aunt's Day, you can make me one. Will you let me read it to you? It is not for me to hear, my angel. It is for your mother. I put the card back in my pocket, plucked out the flower, and dropped it under my shoes. Across the road, the children were yelling each other's names, inviting passing friends to join them. They sat in a circle and shot the crackling leaves high above their heads. The leaves landed on their faces and clung to their hair. It was almost as though they were caught in a rain of daffodils. I continued to watch the children as Danticat prepared what she was bringing to the potluck. She put the last touches on a large tray of sweet potato pudding that filled the whole house with its molasses scent. As soon as the sun set, lamps were lit all over our quarter. The smaller children sat playing marbles near whatever light they could find. The older boys huddled in small groups near the schoolyard fence as they chatted over their books. The girls formed circles around their grandmother's feet, learning to sew. Danticat had promised that in another year or so, she would teach me how to sew. You should not stare, she said, as we passed a nearsighted old woman whispering mystical secrets of needle and thread to a little girl. The girl was squinting as her eyes dashed back and forth to keep up with the movements of her grandmother's old fingers. Can I start sewing soon? I asked Danticat. Soon as I have a little time, she said. She put her hand on my shoulder and bent down to kiss my cheek. Is something troubling you? I asked. Don't let my troubles upset you, she said. When I made the card, I thought it would make you happy. I did not mean to make you sad. You have never done anything to make me sad, she said. That is why this whole thing is going to be so hard. A cool evening breeze circled the dust around our feet. You should put on your blouse with the long sleeves, she said, so you don't catch a cold. I wanted to ask her what was going to be so hard, but she pressed her fingers over my lips and pointed towards the house. She said, go. And so I went. One by one, the men began to file out of their houses. Some carried plantains, others large negro yams, which made your body itch if you touched them raw. There were no men in Danticat's and my house, so we carried the food ourselves to the yard where the children had been playing. The women entered the yard with tins of steaming ginger tea and baskets of cassava bread. Tantati and I sat near the gate, she behind the women, and me behind the girls. Monsieur Augustin stacked some twigs with a rusty pitchfork and dropped his ripe plantain and husked corn on the pile. He lit a long match and dropped it on top of the heap. The flames spread from twig to twig until they all blended into a large smoky fire. Monsieur Augustin's wife began to pass around large cups of ginger tea. The men broke down into small groups and strolled around the garden path, smoking their pipes. Old aunts, aunties, and grandmothers swayed cooing babies on their laps. The teenage boys and girls drifted to dark corners, hidden by the shadows of rustling banana leaves. Tantati said that the way these potlucks started was really a long time ago in the hills. Back then, a whole village would get together and clear a field for planting. The group would take turns clearing each person's land until all the land in the village was cleared and planted. The women would cook large amounts of food while the men worked. Then at sunset, when the work was done, everyone would gather together and enjoy a feast of eating, dancing, and laughter. Here in Croix de Roses, most of the people were city workers who labored in baseball or clothing factories and lived in small, cramped houses to support their families back in the provinces. Tantati said that we were lucky to live in a house as big as ours, with a living room to receive our guests, plus a room for the two of us to sleep in. Tantati said that only people living on New York money, or people with professions like Monsieur Augustin, could afford to live in a house where they did not have to share a yard with a pack of other people. The others had to live in huts, shacks, or one-room houses that sometimes they had to build themselves. In spite of where they might live, this potluck was open to everybody who wanted to come. There was no field to plant, but the workers used their friendships in the factories or their groupings in the common yards as a reason to get together, eat, and celebrate life. Tantati kept looking at Madame Augustin as she passed the tea to each person in the women's circle around us. "How is Martine?" Madame Augustin handed Tantati a cup of steaming tea. Tantati's hand jerked, and the tea sprinkled the back of Madame Augustin's hand. "I saw the facteur bring you something big yesterday." Madame Augustin blew into her tea as she spoke. "Did your sister send you a gift?" Tantati tried to ignore the question. "Was it a gift?" insisted Madame Augustin. "It is not the child's birthday again, is it? She was just 12 no less than 2 months ago." I wondered why Tantati had not showed me the big package. Usually, my mother would send us 2 cassettes with our regular money allowance. One cassette would be for me and Tantati, the other for my grandmother. Usually, Tantati and I would listen to our cassette together. Maybe she was saving it for later. I tried to listen without looking directly at the women's faces. That would have been disrespectful, as bad as speaking without being spoken to. "How is Martine doing over there?" asked Stefan, the albino's wife. She was a sequin piece worker who had made herself a hat from leftover factory sequins. That night, she was wearing a gold bonnet that made her look like a star had landed on her head. "My sister is fine, thank you," Tantati finally answered. Madame Augustin took a sip of tea and looked over at me. She gave me a reprimanding look that said, "Why aren't you playing with the other children?" I quickly lowered my eyes, pretending to be studying some random pebble on the ground. "I would wager that it is very nice over there in New York," Madame Augustine said. I suppose it could be, said Tante Artie. Why have you never gone? Asked Madame Augustine. Perhaps it is not yet the time, said Tante Artie. Perhaps it is, corrected Madame Augustine. She leaned over Tante Artie's shoulder and whispered in a not-so-low voice, When are you going to tell us, Artie? When the car comes to take you to the airport? Is Martine sending for you? Asked the albino's wife. Suddenly all the women began to buzz with questions. When are you leaving? Can it really be as sudden as that? Will you marry there? Will you remember us? I am not going anywhere, Tante Artie interrupted. I have it on good information that it was a plane ticket that you received the other day, said Madame Augustine. If you're not going, then who was the plane ticket for? All their eyes fell on me at the same time. Is the mother sending for the child? Asked the albino's wife. I saw the delivery, said Madame Augustine. Then she is sending for the child, they concluded. Suddenly a large hand was patting my shoulder. This is very good news, said the accompanying voice. It is the best thing that is ever going to happen to you. I could not eat the bowl of food that Tante Artie laid in front of me. I only kept wishing that everyone would disappear so I could go back home. The night very slowly slipped into the early hours of the morning. Soon, everyone began to drift towards their homes. On Saturdays, there was the house to clean, the water to fetch from long distances, and the clothes to wash and iron for the Mother's Day Mass. After everyone was gone, Monsieur Augustin walked Tante Artie and me home. When we got to our door, he moved closer to Tante Artie, as though he wanted to whisper something in her ear. She looked up at him and smiled, then quickly covered her lips with her fingers, as though she suddenly remembered her missing teeth and did not want him to see them. He turned around to look across the street. His wife was carrying some of the pots back inside the house. He squeezed Tante Artie's hand and pressed his cheek against hers. It is good news, Artie, he said. Neither you nor Sophie should be sad. A child belongs with her mother, and a mother with her child. His wife was now sitting on the steps in front of their bougainvillea, waiting for him. I did not think you would tell your wife before I had a chance to tell the child, said Tante Artie to Monsieur Augustin. You must be brave, he said. It is some very wonderful news for this child. The night had grown a bit cool, but we both stood and watched as Monsieur Augustin crossed the street, took the pails from his wife's hand, and bent down to kiss her forehead. He put his arms around her and closed the front door behind them. When you tell someone something and you call it a secret, they should know not to tell others, Tante Artie mumbled to herself. She kept her eyes on the Augustins' house. The main light in their bedroom was lit. Their bodies were silhouetted on the ruffled curtains, blowing in the night breeze. Monsieur Augustin sat in a rocking chair by the window. His wife sat on his lap as he unlaced her long braid of black hair. Monsieur Augustin brushed the hair draped like a silk blanket down Madame Augustine's back. When he was done, Monsieur Augustin got up to undress. Then slowly, Madame Augustine took off her day clothes and slipped into a long-sleeved nightgown. Their laughter rose in the night as they began a tickling fight. The light flickered off and they tumbled into bed. Tante Artie kept looking at the window even after all signs of the Augustins had faded into the night. A tear rolled down her cheek as she unbolted the door to go inside. I immediately started walking towards our bedroom. She raced after me and tried to catch up. When she did, she pressed her hand down on my shoulder and tried to turn my body around to face her. Do you know why I always wished I could read? Her teary eyes gazed directly into mine. I don't know why. I tried to answer as politely as I could. It was always my dream to read, she said, so I could read the old Bible under my pillow and find the answers to everything right there between those pages. What do you think that old Bible would have us do right now about this moment? I don't know, I said. How can you not know? She asked. You try to tell me there is all wisdom in reading, but at a time like this, you disappoint me. You lied, I shouted. She grabbed both my ears and twisted them until they burned. I stomped my feet and walked away. As I rushed to the bed, I began to take off my clothes so quickly that I almost tore them off my body. The smell of lemon perfume stung my nose as I pulled the sheet over my head. I did not lie, she said. I kept a secret, which is different. I wanted to tell you. I needed time to reconcile myself, to accept it. It was very sudden, just a cassette from Martine saying, I want my daughter. And then as fast as you can put two fingers together to snap, she sends me a plane ticket with a date on it. I am not even certain that she's doing this properly. All she tells me is that she arranged it with a woman who works on the airplane. Was I ever going to know? I was going to put you to sleep, then put you in a suitcase and send you to her. One day you would wake up there and you would feel like your whole life with me here was a dream. She tried to force a laugh, but it did not make it past her throat. I had this plan, you see. I thought it was a good plan. I was going to tell you this, that in 1 week you would be going to see your mother. As far as you know, it would just be a visit. I felt it in my heart and took it on Monsieur Augustine's advice that once you got there, you would love it so much that you would beg your mother to let you stay. You have heard with your own ears what everyone has said. We have no right to be sad. I sunk deeper and deeper into the bed and lost my body in the darkness in the folds of the sheet. The bed creaked loudly as Artie climbed up on her side. Don't you ever tell anyone that I cry when I watch Donald and his wife getting ready for bed, she said, sobbing. I groped for my clothes in the dark and found the Mother's Day card that I had made her. I tucked it under her pillow as I listened to her mumble some final words into her sleep.